This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I realize we're not too old to surf as we discuss the 2012 documentary Storm Surfers. How's it going, Jonathan? I'm PT, by the way, everyone. Hello.
Hey, PT, it's going good. How about you?
I just learned today that this movie, the official name was Storm Surfers 3D. I did not
I
experience it in 3D. Did you,
I
by
did
chance,
not
experience it in
experience
3D?
it in 3D either. I did notice the exact same thing though, because I was looking for all my stats on year of release directors, all that stuff. And yeah, there was some Surfers 3D. I wish I would have seen it that way. I think it would have been cooler.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, we could talk about that as we get into it. But tell us, give us, what do we do first? I always forget. Do we do say if we liked it first, or do you do your synopsis?
I think I do the synopsis first, and then we
All
go to
right.
our thumbs up. All right, so a quick synopsis of the movie, this or documentary, and this should be a pretty simple one. It's about two guys, Tom and Ross, that have been lifelong friends. They're professional surfers, and they work with a storm forecaster to try and find these giant swells for huge waves, and then they travel kind of all over the globe to get to them, before they're gone. And it kind of it chronicles their adventure and how they kind of go about doing this. It's
Cool.
about it. It's about big surfing waves.
Nice. I like it. By the way, I meant to tell you this before we started recording, but I'll just be unprofessional and say it right now. So yesterday I was hosting this, or I was guest hosting another podcast because I'm like the TV pundits that just appear on all kinds of shows. I'm like that for podcasts. Whenever there's a opening, I just slide right in there. But anyway, I was having a little issue with my microphone where there's a weird crackling noise when I talked, and I just had to reset my microphone. So if you notice a weird crackling noise, Jonathan, just shout at me, and I will quick reset my microphone while we're
Okay,
going.
I'll give you a cue. I'll either do like a double tap like this, or I'll say, "Hey, there's a weird crinkly noise from your
Yeah,
microphone."
or just go.
All right.
That'd be
Sure.
good.
All
Sound
right, one of those three things for sure.
like- Nice. Okay, so Storm Surfers. How do you feel about this, Jonathan? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I am gonna have to go with the thumbs down on Storm Surfers.
Ooh,
I
okay,
was
good. That's
I was disappointed by Storm Surfers, I have to say, because I was pretty excited about it. Because I love the notion of surfing. I'm not a surfer, although it is on my bucket list of things I want to do and experience. And apparently, I'm, like you said, not too old for it quite yet. Uh, but yeah, I had to go less than the 50% rating on this one for me. So
nice.
thumbs down.
Okay.
PT, what were your thoughts?
It's really pretty close for me to be thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm kind of like wavering, but I guess I'll go thumbs up. For the reasons that I'll talk about as we go. But I'm definitely mixed on it. I think somewhat on the same page, but hey,
Yeah, yeah,
there was just enough there, I think, for me to push it over the
yeah. There
positive.
were some cool moments. Don't get me wrong. There's some salvageable. So this isn't like a bottom of the barrel for me. But if somebody was like, "Hey, should I check out Storm Surfers?" I'd probably be like, "Yeah, there's better stuff you can watch." Unless you got crap loads of free time and you've seen everything, yeah, then check it out. But other than that, yeah, you pass.
Right. All right. Well, before we get too much into it, can I take us on a little diverge from this just for a moment to take us on a? It's irrelevant, but it's a story from my life that's relevant to this
Yeah.
topic. Um,
Yeah, go ahead, Ty. I'm going to be really unprofessional and pause for a second. I'm listening in one ear. I have family emergencies going on. But,
cool. No
but
worries.
continue.
I got it from here. I got a good story. So
You
go
got
go
it?
do,
Okay.
go do what you got to do.
Good story up.
All right. So kind of the classic surf documentaries. There's two that are pretty classic to the genre, and that is Endless Summer 1 and Endless Summer 2. So in college, we got a little obsessed with Endless Summer 2. Man, is that your mercy over already? That was
That's it.
fast.
I take care of business, and I
I
got
guess so.
podcasting too.
All right. Well, I was just
So
saying that
Endless Summer 2.
yeah,
I
there's
got you.
two classic surfing movies really, Endless Summer 1 and Endless Summer 2, and they really relate to this a lot. So this movie a lot. Like there's a lot of formula things that were developed in those two movies that this movie definitely takes. And we'll talk about them as we go. But like the biggest one is just there's two guys, one of whom is a little more like of a daredevil, and the other one who's a little more like zen about surfing and a little more hesitant about the crazy stuff. Like that is straight out of the Endless Summer movies. The two characters. and some other stuff that we'll talk about too. But anyway, in college, a couple friends and I got really obsessed, especially our friend Andy, who does not need much sleep, and I would often wake up in the middle of the night, like 3, 4 in the morning, to the sounds of Endless Summer 2. So one of the things in Endless Summer 2 is there's a first surf shop they visited at the beginning called the Robert August Surf Shop. It's in Huntington Beach, California. Robert August was the star of Endless Summer 1 and plays kind of a mentor role in Endless Summer 2. And so we decided to go out and see this surf shop. We took a 40-hour Greyhound bus ride out to Huntington Beach, California, and to see the surf shop. And when we got there, we were like, we can't find it. And then we asked someone, and they're like, yeah, you see that parking lot there? That used to be the surf shop. It got torn down a couple years ago. And we were like, oh, cool. We should have researched that beforehand. But so anyway, that was that, and that was and we went surfing and stuff like that. So it turned out pretty fun. It is a cool story, but yeah, if that happened today, there's no way that would happen, of course. But that was the early days of the internet.
Right.
And granted, we could have called
Google it.
Like, are you guys still open? But we just assumed. So
Sure.
anyway, I tell you all that to say that I'm passionate about surf movies. There's a lot of stuff I really love about surf movies, and especially those Endless Summer 1 and Endless Summer 2. And there's also a movie called Step Into Liquid, which was directed by the son of the guy who made the Endless Summer movies. It's kind of the unofficial Endless Summer 3. So I may harken back to that a little bit because there's a lot of stuff that I was like, well, man, that was straight out of the Endless Summer movies when they did stuff in this movie. So anyway.
All right. Well, I have not seen the Endless Summer 1 or 2. Sorry to say. So
Right.
I'll be a little behind on that. I'll point them out.
Yep.
But yeah. So I guess getting back into this documentary, I'm gonna. One thing they do, even like right off the bat, they certainly try and like make it as dramatic and intense as they can. And the way they do it was kind of a turnoff from the get-go on this one, because like right off the bat, they actually show a scene from what you find out later on is essentially the end of the movie, where one of them gets like sucked in under a big wave, and anyway, and then they kind of cut to the real beginning of the movie. But I'm like, I think like the telltale sign of any really good documentary is how they suck you in by simply telling the story. You know what I mean? That's really kind of the premise of the whole documentary, is they're just giving you information or informing you about something. And it's not a film, it's not a dramatization, it doesn't need to be scripted, it's just an interesting subject. And this one they're like, oh, is he gonna die? Oh wait, we'll tell you later. And they just kind of do that to suck you in, and I'm like, okay, well, if you're telling me really cool about something amazing, which I think surfing is, and there are so many things about surfing, especially for me as not even a novice surfer. I'm not a surfer, I don't know much about it. I don't know much about like how waves and swells work in the ocean, and like how certain areas apparently always have the exact same waves, but like all that stuff was lost on me, and I was like, there's a lot of dead time in this documentary where I was like, ooh, you really could have like informed me about all that stuff, which I'm interested in. You've made it seem like a really cool thing, but you never explained it. So that was probably my big turn off or downfall for this documentary.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was reading that, there was a time back in like the 60s, 70s when surf documentaries were actually a pretty big draw at the box office. I mean, maybe not like the biggest hits ever, but they got wide releases at the box office. They were in the theaters, and then with the advent of home video, that pretty much stopped happening. And that was one of the goals of Endless Summer 2, going to bring it up again, was to get back into the theaters. They successfully did that. But apparently, I read a little interview with the filmmakers on this one, and that was their basically stated goal, was to do that again, was to try and they did that through the 3D aspect. They're like, we've never seen a surf movie in, good 3D, and we want this to be a return of surf movies to the general audience. So with that in mind, I think you're definitely right that if that was their goal, like if their goal was just to make another, like a surfing movie for people who like surfing movies, I don't think they needed to explain that. But since their goal was to reach a wider audience, I think you're right. They should have explained that a little better.
Yeah, and I think it would have made it, for me personally, and I think for most people that aren't surfers, probably most people, it would have been cooler. It would have brought a lot more to the documentary.
Indeed.
Yeah, which again, like, do you know how that works? Because like they always talk about these certain like places or areas, and they're always trying to find in this documentary. They're always trying to find a new wave. And my thought was like, and like all waves are unique, right? I mean, like they only happen once and they're gone. But I mean, obviously, like as the documentary went on, I could tell like, Hawaii had the pipeline or whatever, which is an area where apparently the wave always breaks in the same way in the same kind of a spot. And I'm guessing, and again, I'm guessing because I was never, didn't clarify it at all in this that, an area like that always has the same kind of wave in the same kind of a place. That's known waves.
Yeah,
or what a wave.
Yeah, you're definitely right on that. It's like different places have the same. I mean, they might have bigger waves or smaller waves certain days, but they're always gonna be similar waves. And I think it has to do with the way it's more to do with like the way the ground under the ocean, is shaped like that.
Right. The topography under the actual the surface of the ocean. Yeah. Well, cool.
Yeah. So early on, we get into another thing that I would say is a staple of just about every surf documentary I've ever seen, and I feel like if they're trying to move it to the modern 3D era, we probably could have done without this, and that is the staged scene. Like, there's a lot of scenes in this where, like, not the surfing scenes, obviously, but the scenes where they're sitting around talking, where it's obviously pretty staged. Like, the one guy, first of all, there's a guy in this who's a surf forecaster, which is a job, apparently, which cool, good for him. But where there's like the first scene that I noticed at least was the scene where he was like, guys, I found a great spot, come over here and check it out. And they're like, stiltily walk over, like, because I mean, they're surfers and they're not actors. So it was obvious that the director was probably like, all right, guys, now you're gonna walk over here and whatever. And I mean, whatever. That's like I said, kind of a staple of surf documentaries and stuff. But still, it's always always a little ridiculous. I don't know if we need those staged scenes.
Right. Yeah. I agree that we could do without the stage scenes. And I also agree that surfers are not actors. So, one thing that I think it was in the first half of the movie, they're sitting around and talking. I think it's Ross is talking, just doing a little monologue to the camera, and he's talking about surfing, and it is definitely a drug to that dude. Like when he describes surfing, he describes addiction. Right. Where he's like, yeah, I love the waves and like they're awesome. And I love them every time, but there's always, I know there's just like a little bit better of a wave, and I haven't found it yet. I'm always searching for that wave. I was like, oh my god, it's just like describing heroin, but it's surfing instead.
Yeah, I made a note of that too. I think I wrote down. Let's see if I can find it. I wrote down something about, dude, there's no one best wave that you're gonna find and then be satisfied. That's not happening.
Right, but then it really made me think about it. That's kind of why. I mean, if it wasn't for that addictive quality in these guys and the fact that they focus their addiction on surfing, there wouldn't be like large, like storm surfers that are taking jet skis off to the middle of the ocean to try and find a giant wave somewhere. Because I mean that's ridiculous. You're just like, oh yeah, but there's a lot of surfing right off the shore. If you figure that out, you don't need to do with this craziness that they're doing and spend a ton of money. I mean, I'm glad they do. It's cool and it's passionate, but it certainly wouldn't exist without guys that were addicted to surfing.
Yeah, and it's I think the psychology behind these guys, I was trying to think about this, is pretty interesting. And so like Tom Carroll, he was a champion surfer. He was in Endless Summer 2, by the way, as well. But he was a champion surfer, and the Ross guy is more the daredevil guy who's, like you said, kind of seems more addicted to it. But now as they're getting older, I'm assuming they can't keep up with like the crazy tricks and the crazy stuff that the younger guys are doing on the normal waves. So I'm wondering if they just need to have a drive to kind of like be the best at something regards to surfing, and that's kind of what's making them chase these crazy huge waves. Is like they're used to just being the best, and they can't quite be the best anymore on the smaller waves. So if we can't be the fanciest, let's ride the biggest waves possible.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. That's an interesting point. My thought on it was more logistical, that these guys really like to surf. It's a passion of theirs, and they want to continue to do it as their profession. So, I mean, if you're right in the sense that, so I didn't think of it as their drive to be the best as much as they just really love to surf. And you can't get paid to surf if you're just like the old has-been guy on,
Right.
trying to compete with dudes that are now doing backflips off waves or whatever, young modern surfers are doing. But they were like, oh, if we just surf really big waves, then we can continue to do this. There's not as much competition for it. And certainly, like, I'm sure these ventures are really expensive for sure. I mean, so they're renting planes and helicopters, and they have rescue crews, and they're obviously sponsored and everything. But I was like, yeah, it must cost a ton of money to go surf these big waves. So, the young guys are probably just like, well, why would I do all that? I can just,
Right.
hit this wave right offshore. The answer is, oh, bless
Pardon
you.
me. Sneezing on the podcast.
Yeah.
No,
But,
that's a good point. Yeah, and it is interesting too. Like you don't see many. Like trying to figure out how to say this without being like condescending towards, like I'm thinking about like all that mayhem or all this mayhem, whatever that doc was we watched. Where like towards the end of that, the one dude, it's like almost a little sad. Like he's like an older guy who's trying to still be in the game, and it's a little bit sad. And like these guys, I mean, hats off to them because they're Tom Carroll's like 49 and Ross I think it was 45 or something or 44, and I don't get that sense from them that I got from the all this mayhem guy. That man, it's just sad that you just give it up. They're still out there doing
right, yeah.
super impressive things. And so
Yeah,
that's
absolutely, absolutely, and they still love it, and they're not doing it like, there was the big difference too. I think that's why it was sad in all this mayhem, is because he wanted to still prove he was like the very best, and that was like it was like a big chip on his shoulder, like I'm not done yet, and blah blah.
Right.
These guys were like, hey, yeah, we're really old, so it's a different game, but we still love it and we still want to do it. And that was kind of their attitude. So it was really cool, and it didn't seem sad at all. But you're right. In the other scenario, just that little fine line gets crossed, and you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of sad.
One part that did crack me up was when Ross was talking about like he was like going through the different decades. And he was like, yeah, when you're like a teenager, you just get out there, you don't care, you just totally crazy, and then when you're in your 20s you're like concentrating on your skill more, but still you're just out there doing whatever. He's like, yeah, and then you're in your 30s, you're married, you have a couple kids, and like I was like, what's he gonna say now? There's like, but then you're like, screw it, I'm doing it anyway. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's one way to approach it.
Right, that was also something I found really interesting was like, so Tom Carroll's pushing 50, and he talks about his kids and his family, and you see them, and they're in there a little bit, and like for us, like there's like one shot where they show his son, and he's not even like, hey, there's my son. They just have this little thing underneath him saying there that says Ross's son, and it's like, oh man, I would never have known that if they didn't mention it. I don't know, is he married? Is he divorced? Does he have one kid or 20? I don't think he mentions any of that. There's nothing about his family in the entire documentary. And I kind of like that. Like that was the other thing. You were right that both these guys are characters. I mean, they're not like outrageous, but they're really cool and certainly interesting. I think you could have and I get it, especially if they're going for a theatrical kind of release where, they want to show big waves and the guys riding them. But like, again, here's another problem with this. Things like that, like a guy riding a giant wave, doesn't translate that well on film. Not saying that it's not impressive, and I didn't watch. I enjoyed seeing some of the surfing and everything like that. But there's so much lost on things like that when you have like a wave in the ocean, which is, I'm sure, if you were on a boat and you watched them surf that wave and you saw just like the power of it coming in and like just felt not just saw it but felt that atmosphere, you'd just be like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And when you see it on your TV screen at home, you're just kind of like, yeah, that's cool. It loses so much. So I mean that through no fault of their own, that really hurt this documentary because a lot of it is watching them surf, and not just watching them surf, but watching the waves roll in, and again, with no reference point, like because they're offshore for most of this. You're out in the middle of the ocean, and a giant wave in a giant ocean is just something that doesn't translate well to a small screen.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And that's I'd say my biggest criticism of this movie is Like I could, I've seen enough surf documentaries that like this stupid staged little parts don't bother me too much and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really to me a surf documentary is 90% the beautiful cinematography, and I really love cool water cinematography. I remember when I was a kid and we for a while we lived in an apartment and it had a pool, and I remember just like laying under the water, just like looking up at the water and the sun, and like that. There's something just so beautiful about the way sun goes through water and all that stuff. And that's what I love about some other surf documentaries is like the way the camera gets in there so close, and you just feel like you're in the barrel with them. And sometimes they'll even shoot it from underwater, and you'll see them coming up. Well, when you're in the middle of the ocean with those insane waves, like you just can't get those really, really good, awesome shots that are in other surf
Agreed,
documentaries.
agreed. And they're essentially on the backside of a storm. This whole thing is shot in winter, so it's dreary. Like you're right, the cinematography kind of sucked, and I know what you're saying because I've seen those. I mean, everybody has at some point or another watched some surfing documentaries or stuff on TV or whatever, where you just see that beautiful crystal water that's so blue with the sun shimmering through it and all that while they're in the pipe, while they're in that wave, and yeah, it's amazing, and you don't get that from this documentary. And obviously, it's about surfing. You need that, and it's a made for movie. You need a visually stunning experience, and not to say it's not cool. I'm not saying there's not some of it, like some of when the waves are rolling over, and when you see there were some shots where you could see like just the way the power and the energy of the wave and just how it transferred across the ocean, and that was cool, but it was very subtle. It was good but not good enough.
Yeah, and yeah, do wonder how much. I kind of wish we could see it in 3D because I'm curious.
I do
If
too.
that
It
would have
could
made a
change
big
it.
difference or not. I don't know.
Yeah, it could make a huge difference on this one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go get.
How about also their bodysuits? Like they were wearing, those were not normal wetsuits. It was like Batman's costume. Or
Totally,
something.
that's exactly what it was. They could have joined the Avengers. It was. Yeah, I don't know what was up with that. If it was a combination of a life jacket / because they have to have, obviously there needs to be some protective gear because if you just get sucked underwater, you're pretty hosed. So, but they definitely look like Batman's armor from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know if we really said this, but like the whole thing is that there's a storm that works its way around the southern seas of the Earth in the winter, and they're kind of trying to find big waves on that, and the way they get into these big waves, because it's like really, really hard to paddle into waves so big, and get in the right spot to be able to surf it, is they get pulled in by a jet ski. So it's always like one of the guys is surfing and the other guy's like towing them in by a jet ski, which is pretty crazy skill in and of itself. I would imagine is like knowing how to ride that jet ski over that crazy wave and knowing where to pull them to and the exact spot and all that stuff.
Right. Plus, you're in the middle of the ocean. It's not like the waves go right where you want them to. I mean, obviously, you got to like anticipate the movement of the wave. Yeah, get them to the right part where the wave's going to actually become a wave and a wall and break and all that stuff. Yeah, that's certainly a skill. And certainly, who would think of that? You know what I mean? That's
right.
Seems pretty crazy. Unless you're like addicted to surfing and that was all you ever thought about.
How do I get into this giant wave? Let's see.
Oh, I love kind of switching gears or whatever, but I love Ross's training. It's like, yeah, some people like work out or do yoga or whatever. I just drive a car really fast. That's how what? That doesn't even make sense. Like, that guy's awesome.
Yeah. Totally. I also like this whole thing about like how when he gets pulled under a wave, he like mentally goes to a nightclub.
I love that too. Like, but who is this guy? Again, this is where this could have gotten so much more interesting to follow that psyche around. I mean, that was. That was.
They were talking about when Tom got pulled under, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it was the scariest thing ever. I didn't know if I was going to come back up." And then Ross is like, "Yeah, whenever I go under, I just imagine myself in this club," and they like do a dramatization of this. He's like, I'm
Right now,
checking out
I'm
all the
checking all the
girls.
hot chicks and their dresses, looking around, and I'm really getting down. And then they do like this stage scene where he's in a dance club and he's doing this ridiculous dance. It's hilarious. And so,
Good.
yeah. So yeah, he's yeah, and yeah, he's funny too because they were never like Tom was like two-time world champion and all that stuff. Obviously, like anytime anybody like talks to him, like any of the people, they're like, yeah, wow, you're like one of the best guys ever. And you can tell they like he's like the Michael Jordan of surfing. They all look up to him. He's like a living legend. You never really see any of that with Ross. Nobody's ever like, oh, it's Ross. Oh my gosh. In fact, they're like, yeah, he never really won anything. And then like 15 years later, he finally won like one event or whatever.
Right.
But he did party a lot. I did mention that.
Hey.
More power to him.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So eventually they do find a spot in the middle of the ocean that they have to go out to and ride a giant wave, and a spot that's never been ridden before, which like I understand the appeal of like finding a beach that where it's never been the waves have never been ridden, but I don't know, like just finding a spot in the middle of the ocean where no one's ever surfed doesn't seem that hard. I mean, I guess they're finding a really good wave there, but it's the whole thing about no one's ever surfed in this spot before. Yeah, it's the middle of the ocean. That's why.
Yeah, there's pretty good reason for that. Yeah, I guess it's still part of that, looking for that mythical, super amazing wave or whatever. But
All right.
yeah, I didn't get it. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of waves on the shore that seems to be pretty cool. One of those, I guess. But,
Crazy. And then eventually we get our way back to Tom's life and death situation at the beginning there.
Yeah, I got to say, my favorite part of the whole documentary, by a long shot, was when Tom comes, he gets sucked in under a big wave out in the middle of the ocean, and it's a pretty big wipeout, and he's under the water for a long time, and he's almost drowned, and he was definitely messed up, and so they're like, hey, you want to switch spots? In other words, you want to like get off your board. The whole documentary, he's been definitely more cautious of the two, and he's conscious of his body if he has injuries and that kind of stuff, and he doesn't surf in the ultra dangerous areas. And so you fully expect after that he's either going to like just completely bow out, or whatever. But he's like, no, man, I'm back in. I'm doing it again. And it was a cool moment. I was like, oh, and like you could tell Ross or whatever was really impressed by that. And was happy to see his friend like not give up. And so I don't know, that was a cool part for it. I'd say the best moment of the documentary for me.
Yeah, I agree. That was a cool moment for sure. Good times. So did this this documentary make you want to surf more or less, or have no effect on your wanting to surf?
I think no effect, honestly. Like, cause I really want to surf, so that was already pretty high on my list. And I thought this would like maybe even like psych me up, like, oh yeah, I got to go do this.
Right.
The one thing that was nice was I was like, oh, well, at least he's like 50 and still surfing, and I'm no longer that young. So I was like, oh yeah, I still got a shot at it. But other than that, I was like, I certainly have no desire to like take an 8-hour trip out to the middle of the ocean to potentially hit an area in the right spot of a storm swell that lasts for 3 hours that may or may not hit to ride a giant wave out there. Didn't inspire me.
Right. We should come out to the Outer Banks in North Carolina and do some surfing with me. The beauty of that spot is like if you go to the most good surf locations in the United States, there's a lot of locals there, and there's like all kinds of surf etiquette. Like people get really, really pissed if you like, snag somebody's wave that they call dibs on, and you didn't like understand their weird way that they're calling dibs, and you can get the shit beat out of you or whatever pretty easily in those kinds of places. But the nice thing about the Northern Banks or the Outer Banks is it's a ton of islands, so, and there's tons of just places where you can go on the beach and be the only ones there and just go surfing or whatever.
Oh, sweet! I'm in. Let's do it.
Cool.
Cool. I definitely can take a week this summer. So
Nice.
let me know when. When are the swells big? I'm in.
All right, I'll investigate.
All right, cool.
So, any final thoughts on Storm Surfers?
Uh, yeah, no, I guess just that the the subtle points of the film, like the stuff about you know still being able to do something you love when you're getting up there in age, even if it's something physical like surfing, were cool. Um, there's the characters, were cool. Both Tom and Ross definitely very interesting. But overall, there's a lot of like downtime in this documentary, and it honestly could have like shaved half an hour off of it, and it probably would have been twice as good. Or they could have filled up a half hour with more cool stuff about surfing, which there's tons of, but I didn't get any out of it. So that's my take on Storm
Sweet.
Surfers.
Are you does this make you want to watch any other surf documentaries, or are you like I've got my fill?
No, you know what? After your, because I knew you and Andy and all the boys back from the day were huge into Endless Summer too, so I would like to see that.
Nice.
Maybe that can be on our list sometime.
Yes, absolutely. We got to get Andy on for that one though,
All
and
right.
we got to schedule about 5 hours because Andy will definitely tell us a lot of facts. How many stars do you give it, Storm Surfers?
I'm gonna go two.
Okay.
2 out of 5.
I guess I'll give it 3, just slightly over halfway. So I enjoyed it as a entry in the surf, documentary genre. I don't think it's like an exemplary example of the genre, but it's got a slightly different angle. So I'm glad I watched it, I guess.
Cool.
So there you go. Storm Surfers. If you have seen the movie or want to tell us your thoughts about it, even if you haven't seen it and want to tell us your thoughts about it, that's cool too. You can email us at feedback@documentaryreviewpodcast.com.
Nothing we respect more than a incredibly strong opinion about something you know nothing about. So just shoot it over.
Yes, this is America. Feel free to sound off on something you know nothing about. All right. My topics for next week is famous, like with it's famous, but with like a little like question mark at the end, because these are people who are famous, but like maybe not
Right.
like super duper famous. They're
like Kathy Griffin's My Life on the D
Yeah,
List.
yeah,
when
that's
when it first started. Yeah. That's pretty famous, but back then. You're freezing up on there for you, Tyler. I'm hoping we get our connection back.
Right. This first one is by far the most famous, but can you hear me?
Yes, you're back. I'm back.
All right.
One way or the other.
All right, cool. So these are all 3 biographical documentaries of 3 people who are somewhere on the famous scale. This first one is probably the most famous, and that would be the documentary is Life Itself. It's a documentary about Roger Ebert and the film critic. And I'm kind of curious about this one because it got super good reviews, but Roger Ebert is basically every film critic's hero. So I don't know if it's good or if it's just people are like, film critics are like, yes, we're being celebrated. So I don't know. Number 2 is called Harmontown, and that is about Dan Harmon, who is the creator of the television show Community, and he was fired from that television show. And in protest, he started a podcast and took his podcast on tour around the country and got up to all kinds. He's like kind of a crazy guy and got up to all kinds of crazy antics, and some interesting stuff happened that made a little news and stuff like that. So that's Harmontown. And finally, we have Whitey, which is the full title is Whitey: The United States versus Whitey Bulger. So it's the story of Whitey Bulger, who's the crime lord guy from Boston who was on trial a couple years ago and apparently has a very interesting life story. So those are your 3 to choose from. You got Ebert, you got Dan Harmon, and you got Whitey Bulger. How do you feel?
Huh. Well, certainly leaning towards Life Itself because I wanted to see that anyway. Plus, I like most people. I like Robert Ebert, and
Yep.
yeah. So let's see. I don't know. That Harmontown sounds kind of funny. Uh, yeah, I don't know. U.S. versus Whitey. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Life itself. Let's
All
check it
right.
out. See what it's all about.
Cool. We will see if we get 2 thumbs up for Roger Ebert or if we ironically give him thumbs down.
Right?
I don't know.
Maybe that's probably why I got such good ratings. That just sounds wrong.
Could be. Could be. So Life itself, we will be back next week with that. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time. This is PT. Keep it real.
And I'm Jonathan. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.